Go ahead if you have an opinion.
Yeah, so in my mind, that's a great question, because to me, that's exactly why we have pre-registration. There is publication bias, right? Which means like we can see that significant results are published more often. And now that you pre-registered your experiment, if you now have an insignificant result, you should theoretically be more likely to get that published, because you did exactly what you set out to do. And if it's insignificant, then that is what we want to be informed by.
No, I'll agree with Carola. Just that's pre-registration is your hedge against an insignificant result. And it is harder to publish insignificant results, but it's not impossible. And I think all of us probably have papers that have been published without insignificant results. I think earlier today I was talking about the fact, there's this fixation on significance, but sometimes an insignificant result is equally important depending on the question you're asking. So I think that's, and I think we're moving in a world where sort of the credibility revolution and whatnot, even in experiments. And I think there's more openness to publishing negative results, particularly if they've been pre-registered. It's also the reason you do a sample size calculation a priori, because then you're sort of hedging against somebody coming back later and saying, oh, you should have just had more sample size. Well, that's again, sort of your hedge against a bit of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of this question needs to be thought of before that pre-registration happens. You really need to think through, am I doing something that is a pilot, or am I doing a full-on study? Am I trying to get an indication as to whether there's a real result here so that I can design a full study and a fully funded study? Or am I doing, am I doing the fully funded study now and getting exactly the sample size that I really need? Because one of the keys to publishing that null result is convincing people that it's a null result with a really tight, confidence interval, that it really is null. And if you can do that, most of the time that will be good. I would also say, you can also give some thought to this in the way you design your experiments and design your research, because a lot of times you can design a question that gets at what you want that doesn't have this problem of one answer is interesting and another answer is not, right? If it can be designed in a way where whatever answer you come up with is actually revealing something that people are interested in, then you're going to have a lot easier time publishing it when you get out on the other end. But these are all sort of design questions, not good answers for what I do once I get the null result, right?
Yeah, maybe I would like to add a couple of additional insights. The first one is that as a student, I will take the pre-registration as an opportunity to really know the literature, where you want to go, and also explore your research hypothesis using what are the main findings in the literature. Regarding the sample size, I will really dig into that in more details. And then obviously sometimes non-results are results. So for example, there is this paper, I think is your paper in AJE about soda taxes. And that is an example of a paper where you don't find any effect. And per se, that finding is a finding for me, right? Because there is a lot of discussion about the effectiveness of policies. And sometimes those policies are not effective because they are not very well designed. And so it depends on how you then would also argue your non-results.
I'll just follow up really quickly because Vincenzina mentioned that paper. I was already thinking about it, and it was inspired by David, so it's sort of relevant here too. That I'd seen him give a paper on reactants, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. Like, let's study this a little bit more. And exactly to his point, it was going to be it could be interesting whether the effect was positive or negative, because one way it was reactants, the other way it was going to be there's some information effect that a soda tax is signaling something about what you should be doing. So, in a way, whether the effect was positive or negative was an interesting result, right? Because it signaled one thing or the other. As it turns out, we actually found the effect was fairly small and close to zero. So we probably found the most, negative outcome in terms of, publishability, but it was a paper that got in the AJE. But because I think, again, it could have gone either direction there.
Sort of building on that, a lot of times, even with a null main result, if you've built in some measures of, people's motivations, and why they're behaving the way they are, that can provide for an opportunity to, well, we've got this null result, but it's, people are actually motivated by the things that the theory tells us they should be, is just not motivating them to do exactly what the theory said it would, right? Something like that. Those are ways that you can make a null result very interesting to a reader, and it builds, adds value in the literature. It adds depth to your result, even if it is null.